Hello, everyone, and welcome. If you are here in the States, good evening. If you are in Australia, good morning. I say that because I have a guest tonight who is from Australia. I am Janice. I am a Reiki Master Teacher here in the US on Long Island, New York, and I am also a self-care coach. Tonight I will be joined by Deija, who went from being an IT project manager to now working in the energy healing field. So everybody welcome Deija. Hello, Deija.
Hey, Janice.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm really looking forward to a chat together.
Yes. So you are in Australia. So thank you for
I am.
for joining us so far away. Also, you started off, you have an interesting story. So walk us through how you went from IT to energy. It's energy, but it's a different kind of energy.
Yeah, it's very different. Same but different. It's all technology. I guess I fell into IT by accident. I got a job straight out of school, way back in the kind of late 80s, early 90s, when IT was so different to what it is today. And I was working on big mainframe computers as a computer operator and learning all about that stuff. And I continued in IT. Was not suited to it at all, except that I'm pretty good with detail and good at learning things and applying it. So yeah, I continued on for many years across a few companies and then expanded out into management and project management in IT. And I also went across health, worked in some big hospitals here in Australia. And yeah, kept moving on. But throughout all of that, like many of us, I was on my own little journey, my journey
Yep.
of learning and self-improvement. And that took me across, like most people, meditation and yoga. And I studied with many of the greats, the American greats and the Australian greats, to just kind of get a bit more of a feel of what the world was all about. And more recently, over the past 10 years, that got to be an experiential thing, not just a mind thing of learning, but actually starting to experience things in myself, in my body, that were unexplainable based on my past, my past kind of very corporate upbringing and very standard and conventional studies and learning. And so, yeah, I started to explore that more. And I guess now people would call it, quantum energy and more of a quantum science. I don't tend to put any particular label on it. I just go with what I feel and what I sense. So I have words come in, I have pictures come in, and I have lots of body sensations that don't belong in the normal everyday life.
I understand.
So yeah, so now that's the journey that I'm on. I work with that. I'm really going with that in as many dimensions as I can. And yeah, through my 30s, I had 2 children, and really, I was going to say, I guess that helped me along. I don't guess. I know that certainly my first child was like a multi-dimensional awakening for me. She demanded that of me, and took me well outside my comfort zone, and still does today. And she's 20 now. So yeah, so it's been really interesting for me to come away from IT and technology. My husband is still in it. He's been in it for 35 years. So I still work with it at an energetic level, which is extremely interesting. He does the 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional IT, and I do the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-dimensional. Yeah, and now to be working more at that multi-dimensional levels with people. But I love applying it with women and really just flipping our lives around and really getting real with stuff and really coming into our other dimensions and what it can mean to us and what we can do with it. So yeah, that's my playground now.
That's an awesome playground. It really is. And it's unlike any other playground you will ever participate in.
Yeah. It has definitely a unique set of rules, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes. I want to welcome Michael. He's watching out there, and thank you, Michael, for joining us. So, um, as you've been on this wonderful journey and you kind of had that awakening in your 30s, and that tends to happen to particularly us women. So we either hit it early or we hit it in midlife, right around kids, usually around when we have kids, or right around the time where our kids are grown and it's like, I get to have a life again. What do I want to do with this? So there's that very broad kind of spectrum, especially for women. I'm not saying it doesn't happen for men as well, because it absolutely does. And I feel for women, it's more because we are in tune a lot of the time. And that's part of the maternal instinct. So I want to know, on that level, you had your daughter. Did you really feel that shift more powerfully than before? Not saying you didn't have it before, but around the time you became a mom, you're like, oh wow, this is different.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it really was a jolt of awakening. At the time, though, it felt like an identity crisis. The first layers that came up for me was, I'm no longer a corporate woman. I'm no longer a high level in management. I no longer have control of this situation. And I just felt so much more comfortable being in a meeting room with 20 other people, most of whom were often men, and, negotiating situations or working through project plans. All of a sudden, I just had one person I was responsible for, and that was this tiny little being. And I found it so much more challenging, and in so many different ways. And I felt a loss of identity that went deeply into my core, and I felt a loss of control that went deeply into my core, that came from my core. And then everything around there was confusion about who I was. There was confusion about how to go about things, the levels of responsibility that came with raising a whole new human being. And underneath that, there was this soul awakening that was happening. And at the time, I didn't realize. It was many, many years after, and having conversations with people, that what I realized was I was starting to live my life from my intuition. I was starting to follow my deeper instincts, and I was just doing it. I was making decisions at the time I didn't realize. So, for example, my daughter was home birthed. Both my children are home birthed. And when I was pregnant, and even before I was pregnant, I was just strongly pulled to do research on certain things. And I was studying a course called Holistic Psychology for a few years beforehand. And that introduced me to Steiner philosophies and Steiner and Waldorf education. Yep. And when I was pregnant, I just got really pulled to learn more about this, and I felt really drawn. And I just followed it. I didn't really think too much of it. The fact that it was very unusual, home birthing and natural parenting was extremely unusual here in Australia, and very much not the norm. But it just didn't seem to register for me. I just was following my instinct. So, and that kept happening. So I home birthed. My daughter was nearly 5 weeks premature, which here in Australia, that breaks the rules of home birth. That means hospital birth. I had the most gorgeous midwife who was literally just the soul sent to me during my pregnancy, and she gave me such strength and courage So she allowed me to have this at home, and she fudged the numbers on the on the birthing documents, but don't tell anyone. And so, because like she said, my daughter was born perfectly. There was nothing wrong with her, and there was no need for me to be in hospital, which would have completely freaked me out and freaked my daughter out. So home birthed, and from there, I didn't vaccinate. I researched, and I felt strongly, really deeply, that vaccination was not the way to go. That it was, I would just sense in my body like needles in my child, and I could feel that that was this intrusion to her soul that she couldn't deal with. So we didn't vaccinate. And I didn't give her sugar, and I breastfed her for years, and then fed her natural foods and organic foods, and I just kept doing these things, and I kept her at home with me. We did a lot of connection type parenting and attachment parenting. So I was holding her a lot and being with her all the time. No television, no devices. All these things just happened. And I didn't even realize, but it was coming from this deep pull of knowing and certainty and intuition. Now I know so much more about my daughter. It's like, well, that was her guiding me. That was her. That was something way higher power guiding me. And I have such appreciation for myself that I followed, that I didn't resist, that I didn't reject, that I didn't fall back into what extended family or society or other mums said or did. I just forged that way. I started my own play group, because the other play groups, it's really hard to go to another play group when the other mums are talking about vaccination and everything they're doing that didn't feel right for me. And so we carved, between her and I, we started to carve this whole new way of life and this whole new lifestyle. And that just kept going.
No, absolutely. And following your intuition, that sometimes it's really hard, because it really can buck what others think you should be doing, how others, it's like, if it doesn't align with others, you get the pushback.
Yes.
Absolutely. But doing what is right for you and your family is always important. And following that intuition line is key, especially for energy workers and light workers such as us. Now, that must have, at the time, it was probably very uncomfortable, but it must have given you some peace looking back, saying, yes, I did what I needed to do and I did it right. I mean, we can't always see it when we're in it, but when we look back, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And I was lucky that that strong sense of intuition within me was so strong that I knew at the time it was right. And so interestingly, my brother and sister had children at similar times to me, and they went the conventional route. They went everything standard, hospital births and bottle feeding, onset routines and vaccinations and earliest possible childcare and earliest possible, stimulation, and lots of plastic toys and lots of bells and whistles, and exact opposite to me. So it was very interesting, because my parents, the grandparents, had this very weird range of grandchildren, and they were needing to look after at various times in lots of different ways. And I, like you say, quiet healer, I guess it is like a quiet rebel. I was just quietly confident. I knew that what I was doing was right. So I found it easy to follow. I was blessed in some way that my parents they're not confronting people. They had a few quiet words with me, and I held my ground and said, I know what I'm doing. This is the right thing that I'm doing. There were doctors that I would go to I had, and I actually ended up starting a parenting group so that I could support other mums in exactly this question, exactly this situation, because they would have husbands that weren't supporting them. They would have in-laws who weren't supporting them and they were struggling. And one of the most common things was doctors. And I had the situation myself, as did many others, where if we weren't vaccinating and we'd have to go to a doctor with our child for some reason, and doctors would say things to me and others like, do you want your child to die? No, you are a bad mum. You are irresponsible. That's really, really difficult. That's really difficult. That is really tugging at a mother's soul when it's an attack. It's really an attack. I see it on the soul. And luckily for me, I don't put doctors on a pedestal. I don't see them as gods. So I kind of felt sorry for them. It's like, you're wrong. You're wrong. And other mums, I opened my heart to and I felt for, because they didn't have that support. They didn't have that strength, and they would cave in and they would have a hospital birth, or they would vaccinate, or they would put their child in a childcare centre they didn't agree with. And that's their journey. And all we can do is bless others and support them as much as we can. So at the time, I held my ground, and I feel my daughter held that energy for me. It was like I had no choice. Now, and my husband was supportive, and I kept saying to my husband, just wait, just wait. It will all become apparent. I do have a bit of forward thinking here. I'm a forward planner. So I constantly would that statement would be, it's okay, just wait, just wait. And so, of course, now what seemed like was going to be a long time hasn't been a long time. My daughter is 20 and my son is about to turn 17. And now it's like we can exhale and go, the world is in chaos, but wow, the foundation we've given our children, I wouldn't take that back for a second. It is the best thing we could have ever done. The homeschooling, the home birthing, the no vaccinations, and not putting them on technology. Even now, none of us are on social media at all. None of us. We're very selective with what we watch on television, and we're very selective with the technology they use, which is only for work and education. And so, it's like we've created this buffer, this beautiful buffer between our energy and the chaos that's going on in the world. So that's worth it. I feel that lioness as a mother, standing up for what I believed in and what my intuition was telling me, it was worth it. Absolutely worth it. And I just hope, and my dreams are that more women can do the same thing, that they can step into that lioness, they can step into that courage, because it doesn't matter if a doctor tells you something or your extended family tells you something, that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right for you or your child. And really the only thing that does tell us what's right is our own hearts and souls. So that's where we need to be focused.
And speaking of our own hearts and souls, everyone has their own definition of peace, their own personal definition of peace. So what is your personal definition of peace?
Yeah, well, for me, a lot of people are focused on this duality of peace is the absence of war. And interestingly, one of the first things that I did, my daughter was around 2 years old, 2.5. And I was doing some study at the time, and I was encouraged to do a project. So I did a playgroup for peace on International Day of Peace. And it was a big event in the city where I was living, and it just came together magically. I just put it out there, and we brought together all different parenting and mothering groups for the day. That was my first conscious recognition of what is peace to me. And without labeling it, it was that. It was this playgroup for peace. It was this focus on mums and kids coming together and being free to be themselves, just to be themselves and to play freely and to speak freely, breastfeed in public. Why not? If that's what's good for the child, just all this freedom around that. So that was interesting. I did that. So yeah, 18 years ago. And since then, I haven't focused a lot on peace in the foreground. However, it has been there as a silent driving force. And for me, it's getting closer and closer to the purity of my own soul, really. It's this ongoing journey of removing the drama, of removing the chaos, of letting go of things that don't work or the illusions that are around me. So for me, it's very much personal peace. It's my heart and soul feeling completely free and completely clear of any pressures, any shoulds, any form of being right or wrong or anything like that. And that's really just the journey that I'm on, that ongoing sense of whatever is happening is fine.
You may have answered this, or you can elaborate on this. How do you personally find peace? What are your quiet moments or your peaceful moments for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it was for so many years following meditation and yoga groups. And so many people would say, I just go outside and I hug a tree and just be in nature. And I could never do that. It didn't work for me. And there was this feeling of, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just go and sit in nature and everything be perfectly calm and peaceful? But it didn't work for me. I have been coming back inside to what does work for me. So for me, there is a lot of routine and a lot of recognition of my own uniqueness. And so it's kind of going, well, actually, I'm highly sensitive, empathic. So what works for me is lots of quiet time and lots of my own home and the beauty and simplicity in my home. So it's very multidimensional. It's the colors that I use in my house, the things that I choose to have on the walls in the house. I have lots and lots of plants inside my house. I do find nature peaceful, but in the way of plants. So I like to talk to my plants. So for me, it's kind of a bit of everything. Not having pressure in the morning. So I don't tend to do Zooms or business first thing in the morning. I like to have a good hour and a half, and that is my space and my time. And I cleanse and I meditate and I regenerate and I come back to source. I come back to the elements. So I do that first before I talk to my husband or solve problems or anything, So I really focus on coming back to myself first. And that creates that foundation for the rest of the day, and keeping technology to a minimum. Really keeping stimulation, noise stimulation, people, technology, all of those things, keeping them to a minimum, really, and managing. I choose who I socialize with and who I do business with, and making conscious choices. That's really what it's about for me, is just every day, every little thing is making those conscious choices, because then that's like, that feels peaceful. I'm consciously choosing what I'm doing right now, what I'm saying right now. It alleviates all pressure, all shoulds, any stress. And it's coming from the inside, creating that peace from the inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You said some key things there, especially about conscious choices and like the colors. There's a psychology to the colors we surround ourselves with and the we surround ourselves with. I'm a big proponent of the colors that are selected because that's going to set the tone and mood of whatever room you're in.
Yeah.
And it will affect anybody who comes into that room, not just us, but the people who choose to be in that room with us. So I loved that. I just had to stress that because I'm a big fan of psychology, color psychology. There we go, color psychology.
Me too. Me too.
But also making the conscious choice of what we do. It's like what technology we're on, who we spend our time with, what we watch. Those
Yeah.
are very important. I mean, because there's sometimes where you want to be in the noise, and then there's oftentimes you don't want to be in the noise.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And over the years, it became apparent when these, like I said at the beginning, weird things were started to happen. And one of them was television. That my husband and I would watch television at night, and there were a few series that we would enjoy watching. But sometimes then I would start to feel extremely ill in the middle of watching television, and emotions would come up like extreme anger or extreme distress, and I'd go to bed thinking, where did this come from? And I very quickly realized it was coming from these television programs. And I started to look into that. And I actually use muscle testing. I learned muscle testing years ago and find it invaluable as my master tool to navigate my own life and that around me. And so I would muscle test certain television programs and things and go, yeah, oh, that's vibrations. Just where are these vibrations at? And now that's what I do with everything. It's really just a check and balance of what kind of vibration is coming from a particular business or a particular product or a particular, whether it's a television program or food or whatever it is. I want that vibration to be as joyful and peaceful as I can if I'm going to consume it. If it's going to come into my space in any way, then why would I want to, fill my space with something that's got a murky, horrible, dark, sludgy vibration?
Deja?
I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like, so I don't. So yeah, conscious choice.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And in those conscious choices, how do you help others find peace? Either in the work you do, well, combination in the work you do and just in the way you are in the world.
Yeah. So that's a great question because that's one that I ask myself all the time. It's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And how can I do it better? And the number one thing that I really believe in is role modeling, particularly as a mother to our children. There's no point saying something if we're not living it, if we're not being it. Kids are smart, so their souls are wise. They are very wise. So that's the first thing in role modeling, and so that's where everything comes back to myself, my own personal vibration, and my own personal work. And then really, it's a soul-to-soul connection now is probably the best way that I could explain it, in that I want my vibration to be a role model, and I want it to be something that people would like to connect to, that people would like to be with. And so really I just offer people that. I offer people my vibration. And then in that is my intuition that comes forth. is my empathic abilities that come forth. And so when I'm working with people or being with people, words just come out of my mouth. And I go, oh, where did that come from? So I just be with them at whatever level that I feel, you know, where they're at, their vibration, my vibration. And even though I like to work with structure, it's really a very fluid structure, because someone might come to me, and which often happens. In fact, I think it always happens. They come requesting, oh, I want this. I want to improve my business, or I want to expand on this idea, or I've got a problem in this area. And that's where we start. But then the journey goes wherever the journey goes, and wherever my intuition and their vibration are ready to travel. And so we have conversations and we share vibrations. And from that, you know, how do I help people? They think things, they learn things about themselves, they shift perspectives, they shift energy, they definitely shift energy. So yeah, it's a combination of things. Basically, I would say at the end of one session, or at the end of working with them over time, their vibration is different. Their vibration is not the same as what it was at the beginning. And then it's up to them what they do with that.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. And helping people shift their vibration or shift their perspective really does have a way of bringing them peace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's them connecting in deeper to themselves. And sometimes they're connecting into their identity a bit more. Sometimes they're just connecting into that feeling of, oh yeah, I knew I should have done that, but I wasn't sure. You know, so they're getting clarity. They're really getting clarity of certain aspects of themselves, and raising their consciousness that little bit, which with all of that, there's confidence. There's confidence there, that people get that little bit more confidence when they know a bit more about themselves, when they're a bit more aware and they're a bit more clear. They go, oh yeah, I feel more confident. And it's their journey. They're actually doing it. I'm not healing them or fixing them or giving them the answers. So there is definitely, I think, a sense of peace in them, in themselves, of, wow, they're doing it. This is their life and their journey and their own growth. And there's all sorts of emotions that go with that, and all sorts of vibrations as well. And peace is definitely one of them, for sure.
Absolutely. And I like to ask what's in your toolbox. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to when your children, well, you have a son who's very close to my son's age, and they can be anxious, they can be angsty, they can be rebellious, but all of that is like, you know, when they're unsettled. I mean, I know for my son, that first match of wrestling season, or that first game of lacrosse, and those nerves are there. And it's very funny, because it took him a while to admit that it was nerves. I would tell him multiple times, like, oh, it's like, my stomach hurts, and I would say, I think it's just nerves, because I mean, I remember those times in competition myself. It's not nerves, you know, you get that pushback. And then at the end of the game, no matter how it went, or the end of the match or meet, it's like, yeah, I think it was nerves. So he concedes to it. But in those moments, I try and bring him some peace and some solace. What's in your toolbox to help with that for particularly adolescents?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of the books and a lot of the focus with parenting is on babies and toddlers and the young children. And the adolescence is, again, I think I went through a whole identity crisis and awakening when my children became teenagers and moved forward. For me, that was when I put them in school as well. I had homeschooled up to then. So we had teenagehood and entering school. They went into a science.
You whammied yourself.
And we actually moved 2,000 kilometres across the country as well to go to this school. So it was crash and burn time. It really was, and that lasted for a number of years. And so yeah, there's a number of things in my toolbox specifically around adolescence and mothering adolescents. One of the first things is they need you more, not less. This whole thing of stepping back, I don't agree with. They need you in a different way, but they do need you. So I feel really stepping up to the plate when they become teenagers. Huge. That's huge. The technology. What can I say? I know that 99% of mothers out there would say to me, you can't keep them off. You can't keep them off social media. You can't keep them off games. You can't. We did, and we still do. So you can, if you choose to, and if you fight for it. And in doing so, you create a different relationship with your children. For us, it was about replacing technology with something else. I will say it's a lot easier when they haven't had it to start with. You know, we introduced technology very slowly. We introduced television very slowly. We introduced phones and music very slowly throughout their life. So going cold turkey in adolescence, yeah, that's going to be hard. But there's no such thing as can't. So it's still conscious choice around technology. The research is there, and my gut is there that technology, specifically for girls, teenage girls, is extremely, extremely threatening and damaging in so many ways. But it is the same for every human, whatever age. So minimizing technology and removing the focus away from technology, I think, is a huge thing to do, but so well worth it. We replace technology with IRL. You know, we have family dinners, we have family meetings, we have family conversations, we have games day. After Christmas Day, the next day, we have our games day, and we play games together. So, you know, we're out there playing quoits, old-fashioned games. So we're bringing a lot of the connection, the real human connection with ourselves, mainly with family, close family, and with other people that we trust that have the same beliefs as we do. So really that human connection, I think, and lots of it, daily. You know, taking the focus away from checking our phone first thing in the morning to checking our teenagers first thing in the morning. You know, where are they at? So, and I do use muscle testing again for my teenagers when they seem anxious. My daughter sounds a lot like your son. She's been very anxious her whole life. And so I use muscle testing. I sit with it and I test with trying to get to that deeper level of where is this coming from? You know, where is this coming from? To then give her some guidance around that. And again, shifting perspective. Teenagers seem to think that things are the end of the world and big and personal. So creating some perspective around that. And one thing we've been doing more recently is encouraging them to start their own spiritual journey. We do sometimes do meditations or rituals together. We like to light candles and say a few blessings here and there, but it's not too strict. But one thing we have done is, I openly talk to my children about things at a more energetic level and a spiritual level, because I don't want it to be seen as different or wacky or whatever. I want them to embrace their own spirit and soul and their own journey. And we have
That was my own son.
Yeah. And one thing that I did was the human design. So I don't know if you've done human design. And so we did that. We did our charts for all four of us and the kids. And, you know, we've sat down and we've talked about that. And so when things are happening, we go back to the human design. It's like, well, are you following your design? Or what is this about? Or in terms of your human design, is this something that you could expect? So having a language that works for all of you to talk about this stuff is really invaluable as well. So choosing language. So I listen to them as to what language works for them. And then with human design, we can use a similar language in terms of, you know, I'm a generator, my daughter is a manifester. So I can say to her, well, you know, I can help you with this stuff, but I can't help you with that stuff. Because I'm an intuitive and you're an emotional. So, you know, you need someone that on that level to talk through emotions and work at that level. So having that language and that structure is invaluable. I also ran us all through the 7 intelligences as well. So that's another little chart that you can use in terms of where you sit, what most things you're fluent in, if you like, rather than just mental intelligence. Particularly for my son, who is not an academic. He's not a sports person. He's not an academic. He doesn't do well with English and words. So my daughter and myself, words are our currency. We love words. We love the vibration of words. And energetically, we even use them telepathically. You know, we can actually talk to each other that way. My husband and my son know words are not their thing. So we ran the little 7 intelligences for each of us, and it actually came out that my son was music. It was actually music was his highest intelligence. And so even though he can play piano, he doesn't tend to play, but he listens to a lot of music. So even though he's like coming on to 17, I sing to him and I make up little rhymes and little ditties, and I'm just using that as a way of connecting to him. You know, little sing-song stuff, because I can speak to him and it doesn't register. I can sing to him and it's connecting with him at a different level.
Yep.
So understanding each of us human design and understanding intelligences and all those things is just a way to connect, to actually be able to say we're all different, we're all hugely unique, we love that we're different and unique, but we need to support each other. And the more I can understand my teenagers, the more I can support them and help them to understand their own uniqueness. So, so all of those are in my toolbox. And definitely from birth, it's been the Steiner philosophies as well. Those beautiful, gentle philosophies. And one of the key ones there with Steiner is, you know, everyone develops at their own pace and in their own way. So I have not forced, you know, in school you learn particular things in year 1 and particular things in year 2. And here in this family, we just learn them when we learn them. And so it's been an interesting ride and a rough ride sometimes, when something that I thought my son could learn in, you know, 6 months, it took him 10 years to learn it. And some things he still hasn't got there yet. However, there's a huge sense of acceptance and peace around that, because I'm honouring him, his own uniqueness, his own style, his own pace of learning, means I can have a much closer relationship with him rather than just, why, do this, do that. So it's really finding ways to honour the uniqueness of each of us. Yeah.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Deija. I am so grateful that you came on today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Yes. I'm going to put you back in the green room. I'll be right back.
Thanks so much.
I want to thank everyone who joined us today and anybody who was watching the stream. You feel free to leave a message, a comment, a question. We can always get that to Deija or myself. I could answer. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. And this Sunday here in the States is Father's Day. So we will be having a special episode honoring the fathers in our life, past and current. And thank you so much for being part of today. And we will see you on Sunday.